"Hey, darlings." If they asked Maxima if he was happy, the young man immediately nodded his head. Of course, he is completely happy. How can it be otherwise? Maxim recently married Veronika, his old friend and even classmate. Of course, they knew each other barely from the beginning, but their personal relationships began to develop far from the beginning. It's even too late to say that Max was in love with Veronika from the first grade, but she just didn't notice him. She looked as if he was the most real empty place. Maxim remembered that day well. The very first day of school in the first grade. Then his mother washed him as best she could, combed his hair on the hairdryer. She gave a wound with some foreign characters in her pockets and a bouquet of roses and took them out the door. They went to school for the first time in the first grade. The school line would not make an impression on the boy at all if it were not for her. A fairy with two big white bands on thin braids. The girl was on the line in the first row, just in front of Maxim, whose head was sticking out of the second and constantly turned. She was interested in everything. What is happening on the left and right from them? Where did the red cat run along the gathered school children? What flowers did the teachers bring to the older children? Where is the microphone connected? The director says. There probably was no such question that would not interest a young primary school student. Usually such a restrained and disciplined one also involuntarily began to look around, although he knew that his mother would not like it. He did not see his mother, but was sure. She is now looking at his behavior from the heads of other parents, and then for such a living interest he will definitely fly to everyone around him. But alas, it was stronger than him. He just needed to know. Where is this cute girl with pigtails and white fluffy bows looking? When the first teacher solemnly brought the guys to class, Maxim made all the effort to sit at the desk with this beautiful girl, dressed in a strict school scarf and a white blouse with a beautiful collar. But alas, without a result. Having measured the first year with a strict gaze, the teacher, Maxim could watch his Znoba sitting behind the second row of the middle row, from the side, from the fifth row. And that's not bad, right? And how he envied Koka and Lesnikova, who had problems with vision, and who, for this reason, was soon transferred to the second row, just to Veronika. He even tried to simulate the same problems with himself, but his mother, an experienced pediatrician, quickly bit him in the manipulations, and forced her son to admit that he had invented all this. School days flowed lazily like water in a swamp, and Maxim revived only when he saw her, Veronika. She became his inspiration and his dream for many years. Only the girl barely noticed the twitching shoulders when trying to get closer and made it clear that she did not want to deepen her acquaintance with him. That Veronika has a bright future. The father of a young cutie was engaged in business, and the girl never missed the opportunity to mention this to the less fortunate classmates. Thanks to the fact that he earned quite a lot, the girl's mother could afford not to work and devote whole days to her daughter. She took her to various circles. She was trying to protect Veronika from those teachers who demanded too much from poor girl. Maxim couldn't be in the cohort of chosen ones. The same as Veronika, with whom she only made friends. They were children from cool families. They could boast of foreign sneakers and fashion gadgets. But Max himself couldn't. The boy didn't have a dad. But there was a mom, stars from the sky. An ordinary pediatrics in a local clinic. Although no, not ordinary. They said she was a very good pediatrics. But can you explain this to Veronika? The girl was. Maxim secretly suffered from panic all those years that they studied under one roof. And he constantly understood. Sooner or later, they will have to go further through the rift. Nika herself clearly made it clear that in the district school it turned out almost by accident, and her further path will be through a prestigious institute, in which her primitive classmates will never be. And then want to study in construction engineering. Of course, this was not the profession of his dream, but somehow he had to earn money for himself. Moreover, his mother was already very old, soon to retire, and the doctor's pension payments are just a joke, without any exaggeration. Maxim did not know about the future fate of Veronika. No, of course, he tried to track her down in social networks, but he didn't really succeed. He just got some information, and that's it. He found out that Veronika didn't go to school after school and stayed in her hometown without any prestigious university. Even the local university didn't let her go, as many of her classmates did. Maxim didn't know and couldn't know what happened in the life of the former school queen, that she had to leave her hand-raised pedestal at one point. And what happened is that, unfortunately, often happens to girls from similar families. Nikki's father was attracted to another woman and gave them a day with his mother to pack up. He was not going to turn his own apartment into a dormitory, and therefore the old wife, together with the no-nonsense adult daughter, had to leave her home. Only now Nika and her mother realized how much all their well-being was ostentatious and unreal. The apartments that were purchased during marriage suddenly turned out to be registered not in the name of the father himself, but in the name of his mother, Veronika's grandmother, who was not at all against this. The cars belonging to the spouses were purchased with money received as a gift from the mother-in-law. That is, all the same rich grandmother, and in general everything that they had either was bought immediately by her name or was made as a gift from her. Neither Nick nor her mother could claim anything, and therefore they followed the orders of the man and left his house. He did not want to help Veronika study further, motivating this by the fact that she recently celebrated her birthday, and he will soon have a new child from his lover. He will need a lot more money than Veronika, but she was mortally offended at Dad, not even because of that. The biggest wound in the heart of the girl left his words. You, like your mother, just a painted-up stupid doll. You have no point in investing. If I had a son, I would help, and you go. You will find a normal man, and he will feed you. Veronika barely held back from sticking her father in her cheek. How could he think that way? Why did he behave like that with her? Didn't Daddy always assure her that she is his little princess and that he will always be with her to help her and protect her? And now it's like that. Neither she nor her mother could accept the fact that the man made his choice. At first, Nika was just crying, lying on the bed. She still did not believe that the fate that so generously gave her in the first years of life, now everything will take away from her, and a rich father, and the opportunity to live on a wide foot. About the same mood was her mother. It's good that they had a roof over their heads, the house of her second grandmother, mother's mother. There, in betrayed humiliation, these two women, who became in one part poor, by their own fault and indifference. Then, Nikki's mother went to work. It's clear that she didn't go to a qualified job, but before marriage, she knew at least something. Now she became a consultant in an anti-age cosmetics store, and old knowledge, along with elite habits, helped her find her place in life. But Nick couldn't make up with the fact that she, just like her mother, would be only fit for work in sales. And she was kicked out of everywhere. Sometimes she left on her own, because she did not like the conditions of work. Sometimes the owners of the business themselves quietly asked her not to bring her to a violent dismissal and just stop going to work. Veronika tried herself in the role of administrator of the beauty salon, manicure master, seller in the children's toys department, and several other similar places. And just once, something did not work out for Nikki. Every time something was in her way, finally she could get peace and happiness. She didn't really want to work, and it was literally written on her face. Because all the business owners were easily out of breath, the door was barely closed behind them. In personal life, Veronika also didn't have luck. You can even say that she was just not lucky catastrophically. Who called her with them and watched at her entrance, now after everything that happened to her, and did not look at Veronika's side. And on others, those that are simpler, she did not look. Why were there those about whom she recently responded in a way that was despicable? Because it somehow turned out that Veronika had very little to talk to. And those who are poorer themselves did not want to hear or see Nick, because she managed to hurt them a lot back then, when she did not think that her happiness would be so erratic and devious. Meanwhile, Dad had a second child, this time a son. He certainly did not want to call her to report this happy news. Her daughter-in-law, Grandma, Mom and Dad, told her about it. She also told the girl that it is not the time for her to twist her nose and take over the groom. There will never be such a thing as before. And she may not count on the inheritance either, because the father has plunged into his late and so suffered fatherhood, and all his thoughts are only that he finally has a son, not some kind of daughter. Veronika was not a stupid girl, and therefore perfectly caught the hints in the words of the old woman. Simply put, they made her understand that they had completely and indisputably removed her from life, and that now, in order to get along as well as possible, she is allowed to use any means. Because there will be no help from anywhere. Mother is too busy to survive, and father is very much distracted by the new toy, in the form of a newborn boy. She nodded and pretended that she understood everything and completely calmed down, but deep down she was upset and wanted to scream. How could it happen that she, with all her external data, did not need not only parents who forgot about her, as if she was not their own, but even a regular boy? Well, what about the fact that she did not let them shoot themselves in the gun before? Times have changed and they are necessary. A couple of times, Veronika agreed to meet with some of the guys who she used to run away from the prisoners, and she never managed to finish this date. The girl was annoyed by the atmosphere of cheap runaways instead of elite restaurants, and such gentlemen could only bring her here. The cheapest tickets for movie theaters, simple bouquets of flowers, and inexpensive souvenirs instead of good gifts. Nika realized that it was not in her position to change, but still could not overpower herself. The girl hardly found an excuse to end the date earlier. Once she was lucky, and in her network, still, one of those young men she had been looking at before. Before Dad threw them out with his mother for the threshold of his perfectly furnished house with expensive repair and high-quality equipment. This guy was called Igor, and he was the son of some local dealer. A couple of times Igor took Veronika to the cinema and restaurants, once gave her a bouquet of roses in the basket, and then offered to drive together to the country house for the weekend. Nikki was not years old, and she understood perfectly what purpose Igor invites her to spend time outside the city. But the girl did not refuse. After all, this guy was the only one next to whom she felt almost like before. In addition, they are longtime adults, which means they can do what they like. No one will judge. Nika and Igor met for a couple of months, and he liked girls more and more every day. Finally, she decided to have a direct conversation with Igor. How does he see their future? Did he ever think about it? And if he thought, does he want to be with her? Igor left the direct answer to the question, but Nika wrote it down for natural manliness. After all, they have such wonderful relationships. It can't be that he didn't think about that it was good for him with her and not with anyone else. Veronika was horrified to find out that she was pregnant. She herself did not know how it could turn out, but now what to worry about? To be nervous and to twitch? It was necessary to talk to Igor as soon as possible so that he too would know what would become of his father. But the conversation, alas, did not work. The young man blamed his girlfriend for doing this on purpose, because she saw that he had great prospects in work and life in general, and she was a yesterday for her rich dad. So it's better for Nick to disappear for good and never show up in front of him again. If Veronika thought that she could push the belly of someone like Igor into the registry, then she was very wrong. And if the girl thinks about telling somewhere that she is pregnant with him, and he dumped her, that he will tell everyone that she is blackmailing him with her naked, unknown from whom, with a belly and a lie, wanted to marry him. Veronika herself did not remember how she got home that evening. She did not have the strength to even cry, because the tears just ran out. The girl realized that now nothing would help her. The mother will not be delighted with what her daughter brought in the pottle, and she has long been completely indifferent to her father. There was no way out of the situation that would suit everyone, and it was only her, Veronika, and no one else who was to blame for this. Nika approximately correctly presented herself to her mother's reaction to the news that she would soon become a grandmother, a small grandson or granddaughter. The woman sharply demanded from her daughter to solve the issue of abortion, or threatened to kick her out of the house on all four sides. Nika, in response, only cried, quietly sobbing and nodding in the order of the mother's words. She herself did not want to give birth to this child. Nika was even mentally and completely indifferent to the children. They were, in her understanding, no more than a means of achieving the goal. Nervous and shouting, Mom went to call her friends and look for money in debt, pay for a medical abortion in a private clinic. Although this is a small amount, but Nika was incredibly grateful to her mother. It is still better to solve the problem with the help of private medicine than to learn about all the charms of all low-budget institutions. The operation was performed as soon as possible. At first, Nika was simply given pills, and then she was released from the consequences of her unseemly behavior. The girl, lying on a cold couch covered with a red glue, gave herself the word that such an error will never happen again. After the abortion, Nika lived her life to the fullest, as much as possible in her situation. She never went on dates again, but tried to find at least something good every day. And with impatience, she waited for the moment when fate would give her the opportunity to feel like a horse again. It was at this moment that Maxim caught the eye of his former classmate, the first smart and handsome schoolgirl. By that time, he had already finished his training in the technical school, and he was still working during his studies. He had to somehow contain himself. Maxim complained about life. There was a roof over his head, some kind of work, too. He always waited for hot food on the table, and in general, the prospects were the most joyful. Of course, it was a lot of embarrassment for the young man that he was always walking alone, but not all at once. Mom said that this problem would definitely be solved in his favor. You just have to wait. Nika herself called Maxim in the crowd at the local supermarket. In the first moment, when the young man turned around, she literally did not know what to tell him. Did she really not recognize him? Did Nika really turn to him? Veronika remembered how she looked at him in high school, and when she saw him in the store, she immediately, with the look of an experienced woman, assessed the product set that he put on the tape moving to the cashier. Not tricky products, but everything is high quality and not cheap. There is no alcohol. Of course, this does not say anything yet, but still important. And there is no child assortment either, so she is not late, and Max is not yet married. She went to the store successfully, and you can't say anything, which means you can start to get depressed. Maxim did not know that he was played the role of another victim. He was sincerely delighted with the opportunity to communicate with Nika, just stand with her next to him, even offer to spend time with her. The girl refused to help, especially since she didn't have any heavy purchases with her, but she agreed to exchange them over the phone. At that moment, there was no one in the world who would be happier than Max. Was he really lucky? Will he finally become happy? Or maybe he just thought so, and Nika didn't drive him away just out of politeness, so as not to offend him. No, it's all nonsense. Just over the years they missed each other, only and everything. And that means everything is in his hands. Maxim did not know, of course, all the certain story that happened in her life before their meeting, and therefore he took the insatiable, sincere interest of the girl for a clean coin. And she blurted out to the guy that he was recognized as such a good, kind, responsible, and hardworking man. What compliments did not make Veronika and her Maxim happy? She could not help but rejoice that they finally met after so many years of separation, and the guy was conquered by her acting skills. And who would have stood in his place? The meetings of Maxim and Veronika were held in the atmosphere of a permanent holiday. And most of all, it was the merit of a young person. He already managed to find out in general that his father refused to finance Veronika's needs, and he was sincerely sorry for her. Therefore, all the excesses of earnings that Maxim had just managed to collect went to gifts and surprises for Nika. Veronika received each of these souvenirs with gratitude and sincerity, as it seemed, from the side of delight. But it only seemed, because an attentive observer would definitely notice the frowning expression of a beautiful face when she was holding another plush teddy bear or a bouquet of balls in her hands. But Veronika was still smart enough to carefully hide her true feelings. Maxim was needed for her, and in order to get his husband as soon as possible, she could try. Veronika considered Max a modern version, in any case, no matter how the events unfolded further. He could not boast of any special appearance, was not rich, and was not famous. So this man was only fit to serve as a trampoline for her in the world of rich men and great opportunities. Nika, from experience, knew that married ladies often associate with much more hunting than just with girls. A married lover is always interested in keeping the secret of relationships because she also has something to hide. She will not be nervous or demand attention, and you can always buy expensive gifts from her. All this was completely satisfying for her. Maxim was on the wings of love. He could not imagine that he could be so happy and so wish every new meeting with Veronika. The girl took all his thoughts, all his wishes with her. There was not even a minute when he would not think about her. Veronika already began to slowly remake Maxim for herself, but only he did not notice it. Stubbornly and unobtrusively convinced his beloved that living with his mother at his age is a sign of an unmarried man, and that it is better to work overtime and earn money for the shoot than to push everyone together in the same kitchen after a busy week. Maxim, who had never thought about it before, because it was simple and comfortable with his mother, now began to pay attention to what really happened. If it weren't for Mom, they could have allowed a lot of things to themselves with Nick, which cannot be done with her. However, before the frank conversation with the mother, Maxim has not yet reached, but Veronika did not doubt that he could do it sooner or later. In fact, her goal was not even a rented apartment, but an exchange of large and convenient mother's housing. If Max could be pushed to a wedding, that any property acquired in the name of her husband in marriage would automatically become common, and therefore she, Veronika, would own at least half of the new apartment. And there, the children will go. It will be possible to break this trap so that he can rewrite his part on their common long-awaited children. When thinking about children, Nika grumbled. She was not going to give birth just like that. For the opportunity to become a father, Maxim will have to promise her something. Maybe a car? Probably exactly. Of course, his salary is not so big, but that's okay. Let him take it on credit. But she, Nika, will drive a beautiful car to envy everyone. But so far, the life of these plans has been far from being realized. To not scare the luck in the face of the former classmate, in her madly in love, Maxim flew like a bird, and only one thing slightly cut off the man and helped him to at least a drop, continued to think with his head. His mother's opinion. She was not an old woman, and Veronika literally saw through. This was facilitated by the profession, thanks to which she knew people thoroughly, and partly the fact that the girl actually grew up in her eyes, and much of her was obvious even from early childhood. Mother tried to persuade her son to think and start building his life with a good girl, with the one who does not need from him not only something material and not only the opportunity, before she finds a worthy companion of life. But Maxim was in the sense of deaf to the motherly warnings. He did not even want to think that all the hot love of Veronika could be the result of her indecency, and not at all the recognition of him as the main man in her life. Nika saw how her mother affects her boyfriend. She decided that she would definitely cope with this problem and began from afar. She advised Maxim to pick up a man's mother, and that she is not an old woman at all, and still alone. The young girl's plan was that the potential blood sister would be distracted by her own relationships and stop brainwashing her son. But he, alas, failed. Mama Maxim did not want to blow up one dowdy with Nick, enter into new relationships, and even the son's contracts did not work on her. When Veronika realized that this plan was failed by the fiasco, she began to act differently. She tried to make friends with an elderly woman, in which Maxim himself actively helped her. But even then the girl failed, because Maxim's mother talked to her, although without delight, but she refused to stand on her side. Sometimes she even said so, in direct text. "And you won't touch Max. You'll get tired and be like this, and what will he do then?" Veronika then manipulated and offended. She didn't answer the phone for several hours in a row. She refused to meet with Max. She called him her mother's sons and shouted that she would better find herself normal, worthy, and everything in the light of his own mother. Partially, her plan was successful. The young man began to get angry at his mother and talked to her about the fact that she was not tactically communicating with his girlfriend. However, she was ready to answer everything. "I just told the truth. And you, if you are so young and early, do not hurry to have children at least. Then we'll see who is right. Time will tell, son." Maxim lived between these two fires and wished for only one.
Be vidt Veronika always.
He worked like a wolf, grabbed the settings for any work, and made her gifts. The young man realized that Veronika was especially pleased with the visit of the jewelry store, and because of that, he chose various souvenirs for his beloved. The girl always accepted the offer favorably, warmly thanked Maxim, and because of that, he was ready to carry her more and more. Sometimes even forget about yourself. Veronika's mother did not approve the intention of her only daughter to continue her relationship. She believed that she raised a daughter not for such a hard worker as Maxim. With him, Veronika is now simply losing her precious time, spending her youth and health on him. You don't need to meet him, Nika, because there's nothing to do with him. Look at your Maxim. Won't you be offended that your friends found normal men for themselves and live in their own pleasure, and you with him? Aren't you offended? Veronika was offended. But after the story with Igor, she decided to stop taking risks for some time. It is not known what will happen if this episode from her life will rise and Maxim will learn about it. It's all quiet, peaceful, and well-built so far, but how does he react? No, you have to be silent and pretend that everything suits her. Not enough for all princes and oligarchs. You have to start with something. And to leave the fool and build your life anew, she will always have time. Especially since Maxim, of course he is a hungry man, but at least with a roof over his head. What's the point that the mother was married to a very rich man and was like a cheese and butter? What did he leave her after he kicked out Zaporozhko and changed to a young mistress? Nothing in the first place. So Maxim is not the most unsuccessful option. And Veronika continued to imitate the hot passion for a simple and hardworking guy. She just wanted to break through in this life, and it doesn't matter how she will achieve her goals. Veronika was focused on Maxim as the only one in her environment who was a real candidate for marriage. Other men she knew wouldn't make her offer her arms and heart. It was more than clear. They would line up in line for the right to call such a beauty their wife. But now, when from the provided only daughter of a large businessman, Veronika became a low-class saleswoman of a shopping island in a local Universal store, the crowd of people who lived around her did not observe. Nika saw it, understood it, and she was incredibly happy. Here, her own life philosophy was against her. The girl couldn't take it in. Is she, Nika, not worthy of love just like that by default? Although the girl herself, of course, did not strive to love anyone, even the same Maxim, just for the very fact of his existence. Maxim had to spend a lot of time at work to be able to provide the growing needs of his girlfriend. Moreover, he always kept the dictionary in mind. She agrees to live with him under one roof if he takes them apart. Having the opportunity to see your beloved not from time to time, but constantly, was a long-awaited dream of Max, and he began to actively work in this direction. One day, he just made Veronika a surprise. "We'll start living together as a family." He rented a great apartment for them and is glad to invite Veronika there. The girl showed joy and anticipation on her face, hugged the man tightly and kissed his lips, and thought about herself that her plan is going quite successfully. Now they will live separately for some time. She will be able to. And then you can start to deal with him about marriage and exchange of them with the mother of the apartment. The mother of the young man made about the same conclusions about herself, but she didn't say anything to her beloved son. Her life experience told her that all these attempts are empty. Maxim will understand everything himself, although when everything will open up in the most unsightly way for him. But what to do? Other options are still not expected. Veronika, with joy and pleasure, left her mother and began to live with Maxim in a rented apartment. Of course, these were not the luxurious conditions that the young girl dreamed of. Sometimes she even cried from anger and hatred to the inability to change something. Her girlfriends posted their beautiful lives on social networks. Expensive cars, no less expensive gifts from men and other pleasures. And she didn't get a well-off, wealthy guy. All she has is a lowly brood from a very simple family, which also needs to be prepared for. Veronika did not want to do housework and run the business in the way Maxim used to observe in his native family. His mother was completely different. Despite her busy schedule at work, they always had clean, tidy, delicious smell, freshly cooked food, and no one ever walked in dirty things. However, the young man consoled himself by the fact that for his girlfriend it was the first experience of living with a man together. Therefore, she still simply cannot manage the household life the way his mother learned to do it for the rest of her life. Veronika still has a long way to go. For his sake, she will definitely learn to cook deliciously and clean and take care of things. In other words, everything will be, but not at once. Veronika, with obvious disgust, took up any job at home. Whether it was just that Maxim was not the one for which she could strain herself, or whether the desire for a beautiful life covered her head, but the young girl did not like it at all. They do not talk in the kitchen. Not to wash the floors on purpose. With great pleasure, she preferred to persuade Maxima to take her to dinner in a restaurant than to cook and grind potatoes puree. And if there was simply no money in the cafe and restaurant, then at least order some sushi or pizza at home. At work, Veronika also did not shine among those who regularly received awards from the management. The girl generally considered her own dignity lower. Work as a simple seller, so she fulfilled her duties after the arm. However, recently, their supervisor changed. Instead of an average-aged woman, the man became the leader of the sellers on the trading islands. He was a bold, tall, and strong former boxer who was somehow blown into business below and offered her two options for the choice. Either he reports everything upstairs and she is immediately fired, or she will be affectionate with him. Veronika did not even think about how to accept his offer. Was it even appropriate to talk about the choice? Of course, she agrees to be with him in all senses of the word. Of course, they agreed to keep their relationship in secret and began to meet. Maxim realized that something was going on with his girlfriend, but he could not guess about the true reason for her dim eyes, mysterious half-smiles, and the like. He began to try to pay even more attention to her because he thought that she was suffering because of his absence, so stupid thoughts came to his mind. Maxim was lost at work, just so much to earn for the life that at least remotely arranged, and every free minute of rest he wanted to spend with his beloved girl and strive to her without looking at anything. Veronika, who perfectly understood that her relationship with the boxer was not about the family, but about mutual benefit, did not want to miss such a promising guy in terms of getting a flat like Maxim. So she poured it exactly on the frying pan. until the passion for them with the boxer did not catch them at the rented apartment that he found and rented for them with Nick and Maxim. Max came home as he thought for lunch, have a snack, and go to another object. The man sincerely believed that Veronika was not yet at home, and he would surprise her with something that would cook and leave some kind of tricky dinner on the stove. But he barely crossed the threshold of the apartment. The sounds coming from the only room made him anxious. Maxim saw everything with his own eyes. Veronika did not even try to escape, seeing Max's doors. As for the boxer, he only smelled the bedsheets on his hips and walked into the bathroom, especially touching Maxim's. Maxim simply had no strength to swear and find out the relationship. The first impulse of a young man was to pack his things and go to his mother, but then Veronika began to cry. Maxim did not cry out of female tears at all, and the tears of a beloved woman, especially, he could not physically see that she was in bad shape, and the salty drops rolling down his cheeks were proof of this. And he stayed. It remains to hear that Nika feels completely lonely, that no one understands her, that she has lost herself and does not know how to live and be. When Veronika wanted, she could have been just a beautiful actress and convincingly played the role of a little girl who was entangled in lies and truth. Maxim did not know what to do now. On the one hand, the act of this woman humiliated him and trampled him like a man. Can it be forgiven that in their own bed this woman behaves as if easily accessible and agrees to everything? Maxim was in pain, and this pain and resentment burned him from the inside. So Mom was right about Veronika. Maxim just sat in a chair, dropping his head on his hand. He could not come to his senses and decide what to do next. He did not understand how to build his life now and what to say to Veronika. The girl herself expected a much more vivid reaction from Maxim to such an opening. Man's, and still can be fixed, what she did. Maxim briefly watched as Nika, smelling the bed, smeared tears on her cheeks. Each of her gestures was just an example of a demonstration of suffering. Veronika was so great in breaking her hands that it created the impression that she was really worried about what happened. I didn't want to, he said. He said that he would definitely fire me if I didn't work with him. I was so afraid to lose my job, honey. I understand everything. You can't work alone to earn money. I was so afraid to be without money. It was him. He could do it. The incomprehensible, almost unconnected blabbering reached the ears of the addressant, and Maxim was much louder. Nika realized that this was her first victory. He did not object, did not get angry, did not throw the accusation in her face. He calmly digested the information. Veronika quietly sighed, leaning her head against the back of the sofa. She noticed that Maxim was watching her from under the open eyelashes and did not raise her eyes at him. Let her suffer. Let her worry about the fact that he is such a bad hunter, that his girlfriend just had to keep her place under the sun in a similar way. No one could have said what Maxima's thoughts would really be like at that moment. But the pity and love for Veronika overpowered the bitterness, resentment, and desire for revenge in him. He looked at her, crying, gentle, loving, but just regressed, and it seemed to him that he had done it all for nothing. You need to talk to her calmly and make sure that Nika is not nervous. Who knows what happened there? Maybe this bug really threatened her. Maybe even something worse. But he can't afford to lose his beloved Veronika because of such a misunderstanding. Maxim got up, approached the girl, frozen on the couch, sat next to her and began to stroke her back. So, Veronika realized that she had one. But the girl had to continue to break the comedy. No wonder that this person really thought, no, you still have to push a little harder on him. From the outside, it seemed that Veronika was just upset. She cried and read everything, that she understands everything, so much guilty of her lover, that she herself cannot understand how she agreed to all this and what she was forced to. and that she will never let herself even think about the fact that such a way out is possible. In other words, Nika said exactly what she wanted to hear from Maxim in this situation. His loving heart could not resist such an obvious and visible confirmation of repentance, and he whispered in her beautiful hair, "Don't cry, my dear. We'll do everything so that you won't have to deal with him anymore. Just don't cry." Veronika clung to Maxim's shoulder and cried almost for real. Now she was crying for her fate, which she considered so unfortunate. The biggest culprit of the fact that she had to sit here in this poor rented apartment with a man she would be incredibly happy to get rid of, she considered her father. And her mother was not much better than her father either. If she had not been such a bitch all her life and cared about her interests, they would not have been left on the streets after her father kicked them out of the apartment. In addition, Veronika sincerely did not understand why Igor turned out to be so close that he could not even reach the walls with his belly. All this together led her to the fact that now she is leaning against the shoulder of a completely indifferent man to her, on whom she would not even look at under other circumstances, and she is crying. She is crying over her ruined life, in which there will be something good someday. Will there be? Will Maxim forgive her to the end? How will her today's betrayal affect their relationship? Maxim pitied the girl completely sincerely and tenderly. He believed that in the bed with the boxer Veronika lay exclusively from indifference, so as not to lose the profitable place, and decided that with the problem should be understood much more radically. Veronika, let's you call your boss and say that tomorrow you are not working there. Well, here's this income. I'll take another object, and we'll live well together, okay? Veronika was unnoticeably upset for Maxim. Well, the fool has already swum. This is exactly what she needed from him. Of course, she will find a way to satisfy all her needs, but now she will be much more careful. He should not find out that his girlfriend did not think of repenting. Well, the worse for Maxim. Because who is lucky, they go. Veronika well mastered this style of communication from her own dad, who only did this in business with his counteragents. It seems that if she did not get any material profit from her father, she will be able to take advantage of his advice and life principles. Not so little in the dry remnant. Maxim immediately switched from word to business, not caring about paying the money in reality. Therefore, Veronika very quickly got the bill and became a housewife. Maxim began to work even harder and harder. He took another object as a workup, although he saw that he almost did not have time to sleep and eat. It was much more important for a young man for his beloved woman to smile and be happy in all relationships than just lying in bed for the extra time. However, Veronika did not bloom from the constant stay at home and did not want to make the apartment more comfortable. She did not want her work to be used in the rented apartment. Slowly, she began to set Maxima up for the fact that she needed to persuade his mother to change the big apartment in which she lives now. There were many different answers, including some pretty ugly ones. As a standard one, you don't love me and you don't want us to be good to each other, and you are not happy that your potential in-laws take so many rooms from you, and you have to work hard for your only son without bending your back to pay for the rent. Maxim, who didn't want to start this conversation with his mother. Yes, and that he is not a man or something to drive away from the home of an old mother. But Veronika already settled her beloved horse and was not going to stop the pressure. In the end, Maxim was interested only in the status of a spouse with a personal apartment, which he was supposed to get according to her plan after the registration of the marriage, and those inconveniences that his mother will experience for this reason. She was not pleased with the woman who looked at her so carefully that it seemed that she could read her thoughts. Therefore, they met extremely rarely. Veronika always found any excuse not to go to her. She can't lose. Maxim just has to persuade his mother to exchange housing. Maxim, meanwhile, was thinking about how to make a proposal to Veronika. But only she can make him happy. Nika is created for something greater in this life. She is so airy, so light, so gentle. Who can protect her in this big and cold world? Who, if not him? But how to persuade Veronika to become his wife? Maxim decided to consult with his mother about how to make Nika an offer. He understood, of course, that his mother would not approve of such haste, nor such an idea at all, but he just could not do otherwise. Maxima's mother understood that her son was completely influenced by this girl, but she did not consider Veronika neither nice nor good. Cold, calculating, seductive, and nasty. She did not have other epithets for her bride. But she still didn't want to tell her son everything that she thinks about this Veronika. Maybe they'll be lucky and she'll just refuse the wedding. After all, Maxim is not at all within her dreams. You don't have to be a particularly transparent person to see it clearly. Her son is just in love with everything. And as soon as the fog of love fades, it turns out that they are not on the way. Oh, I wish I had done it sooner. Mom didn't give her son any advice. She just asked Max not to rush with the inheritance, and that's it. Let time itself put everything in its place. Maxim, trembling in his chest, was waiting for a favorable opportunity to make a proposal to Veronika. And so he waited. He put everything so beautifully, as much as it allowed him to finance and fantasy. And Veronika agreed. There was no one that evening who would be as happy as Max. And then there was a marriage. Not as luxurious as the wedding that Nick dreamed of, but also quite decent. Veronika's father did not even wish to invest for the sake of his daughter. Nick herself did not work. Her mother publicly announced that she would not help because there was nothing and there was no reason, and all the burden of financing took on his shoulders Maxim. He lost weight and seems to have dried out, but was able to earn at least a minimum list of requirements for a young wife. The young people began to live in the same rented apartment that Maxim once brought his future wife Veronika to. Here, the guy completely felt on his skin what character his wife had. Veronika could not find herself in life, and the anxiety associated with him. Maxim decided that it would be better for everyone if Nika would only be engaged in the maintenance of their domestic unit. Nika also did not study, although Max suggested that she go to the construction equipment, the same place where he studied at the time. But the girl literally laughed at him, which caused the young husband to have a sharp sense of misunderstanding and even, "You want me to study in engineering? And also in construction? And who am I going to be by diploma? Painter and plaster? No, I didn't expect that from you." Maxim understood well what Veronika meant. She was really airy and light. What construction specialties there? But he thought completely differently when he offered her to go there to study. The young man thought that the profession, for example, it's just a great option for a girl who didn't study anywhere after school. And if you just look at the translator, it would be great. But he remained incomprehensible. Somehow it gradually turned out that Mom, Veronika, began to play the first violin in their family. When Maxim would not come from work, and she sat here as here, and often she had a couple of vulgar comments in his address. "Well, what are you, son? You did not do that, and you did not do that. Or do you think that someone will come and solve everything for you? No, my dear, the school was called a load. So get into the body. You are a husband from now on, so do what a husband should do." To be completely accurate, Maxim did not imagine what a wife should do, according to his mother-in-law, because if he does everything she wanted from him, at that time he definitely won't have time for work, because no matter how much you work, hours a day is enough, and he should have time to sleep and eat. Veronika smiled beautifully and asked not to take her mother's words into her head. She said, without thinking, "Don't be mad at her. Please, what will you do with her?" Maxim ate little and slept little. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not satisfy all the requests of the young wife. Veronika did not like to save on herself too much before, but now her demands have increased somewhat. But Maxim loved her even so, and did not want to accept the fact that she was only interested in material goods and not personal merits. Veronika wanted to rest as her friends rested, that is, everything is included in the system. On foreign resorts. Maxim never been there in his entire life, and somehow calmly accepted this fact as a given, did not get upset. Veronika strived to have the opportunity almost every day to visit a cosmetologist or other specialists in beauty. No matter how much Maxim complimented her about figure and face, she waved away from him and refused and demanded money to keep herself in shape. When Max found out what amounts it was about, he barely lost consciousness. He could not pay such expenses even if he wanted to, because he had to pay for everything else too. Veronika also wanted Maxim to stop helping his mother to save money. It so happened that almost immediately after the wedding of the son, the health of the woman seriously shook, and Max, as the only son, was forced to spend some money on buying food and medicine for an elderly mother. And Veronika, of course, did not like it. The young girl believed that everything necessary for treatment could be obtained for free at the clinic, and good old-age products were no longer needed at all. It would be better for Maxim to take this money into the credit machine so that he could ride in his own pleasure. Max tolerated and kept silent, although sometimes I really wanted to express myself sharply. But every time such a desire overpowered common sense, the young man found something to be distracted from, and the peace in the family was preserved. True, at an expensive price, but Nika didn't even guess about it. Another headache, both in the direct and in the figurative sense, became for Maxim the desire of Veronika to get her own apartment no matter what. Earlier, the girl did not directly show such great activity in this matter. She persuaded and warned, but did not go to the breakthrough. Now, when the marriage was concluded, Veronika realized that there are no more obstacles and obstacles, and now she can insist on her own and achieve the right decision for Maxim. The apartment in which the mother and Maxim lived was given to them by the women's parents, and she was initially assigned to them both in equal parts, in half. That's what Grandpa and Grandma Max wanted. But then no one began to argue with them, because they could not imagine that an adult person would appear in the life of a boy, such a pike as Veronika, who would decide with his help to get her own square meters. Now, for his old mother, this decision of many years ago turned into a real. There was no such day. The old woman knew perfectly well that the young bride did not cut her son for the fact that he had not kicked out his mother yet, and did not finish the exchange of apartments for two less. Of course, it was easiest to do what this Veronika wanted. But then her Maxim would just stay on the street after how this terrible woman will get from him everything that she planned. Mom saw her plans through, but unfortunately could not convince her son that this is the reality. Max's mother tried to save full-fledged housing for him, even at the cost of her nerves. Therefore, she reacted quite sluggishly to all the lame attempts of her son to talk about the fact that the apartment should still be either sold or exchanged for her mother's choice. She broke up only once, when Veronika herself called her without being shy. A lot was said then about everything bad and offensive. Nika screamed that she is not a mother, but a selfless egoist who does not want her son's family to survive, and that she sits on these unprofitable square meters like a sly, instead of living on her own and letting the young generation live. Her fiancé also accused her of the fact that because of such an approach to real estate, she will not have grandchildren, because normal women are not born anywhere. And in general, according to Nick, at the same time, the fact that she takes material help from her son, she had long been obliged to sign on at the second half of the housing area and go live at the station herself, even in the dugout. It doesn't matter to her. But the elderly woman turned out to be smarter than the young, but stupid and impulsive bride. That's why she didn't start swearing at Veronika, but just put the phone down. However, it still did not help completely avoid a scandal in their family. In the evening, Maxim called and seemed to be interested in the matter. "Why did Mom read so much today?" and hurt his wife. Mom did not seek to find out about her relationship with her own son, because she simply wished them both wisdom and reminded them that until now she has never raised her voice on the bride. But if Nika continues to communicate with her in this tone, it is simply inevitable. She said she was very patient, although inside the elderly lady was literally crying. She was so sorry that her son's wife became this mean and hypocrite girl about which she had nothing to say, even a good word. Maxim, before meeting Veronika, met several girls in a flash. Nothing serious, of course, but they were all sweet and not that this incomprehensible general in a skirt. And the appearance, too. Although you can't drink water from the face, but Veronika was exactly blinded by one with Barbie doll sample. Symbolic, hysterical, and stupid. Yes, so not lucky to Maxim. So not lucky. One thing is good. It seems the bride so protects herself and her precious health that they do not plan to give birth to Maxim children in the near future. That the boy will be enlightened before she ties him to herself for at least years. Maxim tried to please Veronika in everything, but despite this, she more and more often was in a bad mood. The girl did not understand how it turns out that he is in no hurry to fulfill her demand, sell a large apartment and buy a new one less. And then, Max also had a lot of earnings, not too inspiring. The previous contractor at their facility went bankrupt, and they still didn't have time to find a new one. Therefore, Maxim asked her to spend as much money as possible, because it is not known what will happen next with the salary. But this quiet and modest request was not liked by Nikki decisively. She immediately ran into battle. You just can't do it, and don't want to earn money. We are sitting here in this removable hole, and we can't even afford to have a decent rest. Is this what I wanted from you when I agreed to become your wife? Maxim tried to calm his furious young wife, but came across real hysteria. I wanted everything to be beautiful with us. Do you think, perhaps, that I will agree to live with you and count the pennies from one of your salaries to the next? And I don't want to save money. I want to live happily and not count the pennies in my wallet, because you don't know how to do anything. If you wanted your wife to be lowly next to you, then you had to choose exactly that. It was no longer possible to stop Veronika. She entered the rush and screamed, screamed, screamed. Today, Maxim learned a lot about himself, and that she never loved him, and that he is a hopeless lowly brood, and that she does not need a man who is not able to provide her with the normal. Maxim tried to calm down his wife, but it was in vain. Veronika was like a hurricane, and she swept everything off her path. Finally, screaming enough, the young woman dragged a suitcase out of the room, opened it, and threw it on the floor. All the belongings of her husband flew into the suitcase, even home slippers and accessories for shaving from the bathroom. Why do you need to have such a wife like me? You're a nasty, poor brood. You can't earn. You're just a piece of trash, and you can't imagine anything. When you have money, there will be a foreign exchange and a bank account. If you buy your own apartment, then come to me. And until then, you can't even get out of here. Is that clear to you? Maxim took the suitcase she gave him, and 5 minutes later the door of the entrance closed behind him. The man heard Veronika screaming something from the window behind him, but did not want to listen to understand what it was. He hurried and slowly walked home to his mother. Maxim could not come to his senses for a long time after what Veronika had done to him. Before finally getting away from him, she took care that all their friends, and there were a lot of them, because they were still classmates, learned that he represents nothing of himself, neither at work, nor when to be, or in what. Nika just zeroed out his authority, and even those with whom he talked normally all this time began to touch him with a smile. Only then did Maxim understand the full truth of his mother. She gave him another just great advice. According to this woman, it was best for Max to start life over. Leave the capital to another city, smaller. There will be plenty of opportunities for career growth, because the competition is not so serious, and he will not be able to spend his salary anywhere. So some amount will accumulate, and he will stop missing Nick. Maxim did not think for a long time and decided to follow the mother's advice. In the end, what kept him here? But there, in another city, he can still succeed if he, of course, is reasonable. And Veronika will not blink before his eyes. Common acquaintances will again find another topic for conversation during his absence, and he will calmly work and return to the capital with money. So the decision was made and embodied in life. While Maxim was breaking through in the regional center, Nika also didn't have a life in place. Although it's hard to say that the girl liked what she eventually got. Without the material support of the man, she didn't last long, and very soon, almost immediately after Max's departure, she became a lover of the same supervisor from her former job. Only now they could not hide it all, because Max was no longer interested in what and how his Veronika was engaged. Soon she got bored of this man, and she had to look for a new one, the one who would spit on her appearance. Of course, she found something similar to that boxer. And then, when she got along with him, she had to look for another one, and then the next one. She was needed as a comfort for the soul and body, but not as a companion in life. Maxim's business also went well at first. It was not easy for him to get used to life in a foreign place, far from those he loved. But gradually, another city captured Max, and the young man learned to see something good in the fact that he did not stay in the capital and moved here. He didn't even work. He just worked. He worked without weekends and holidays, didn't let himself buy extra things, didn't have a day off on the couch. He was saving and putting everything away. The exception to this rule was only for his mother. He sent her money every month and was happy about it like a child. After a couple of years of living in the region, he chose a girl to be his substitute. Entrepreneurial, housewife, child lover, and not at all scandalous. You could even say quiet and calm. Maxima's wife could not boast of model parameters, and she had no kilogram of silicone on her face. But she was exactly the one he really needed. Real, sincere, kind, and thoughtful. In other words, a true joy for the soul of a person bent before in a rigid frame. Maxim could not imagine that he would come back from work, and his wife was having fun with someone on the couch. He could not even think that after a whole shift he would get up to the stove and cook because there was nothing to eat otherwise. And with the children, they decided not to delay. They almost immediately had a daughter, and after a short period of time a son appeared at birth. Now Maxim was truly happy. In addition to the fact that he realized himself in marriage, he also received the position of head of construction. Now he was a proraba, and he had a lot of responsibility. Once, coming from work, Maxim pleased all his housemates with unexpected but very pleasant news. They are all going abroad together. About a year. And they're how it will turn out. Because his company won over the construction of buildings in Europe in a row, which means that they will all live there. He will not leave without his wonderful children and the most beautiful wife in the world. The assemblies did not take much time, and soon they were already living in a new house. The children happily ran around the rooms, the wife inspected the kitchen, and Maxim himself came out and stood in front of the door in the backyard. From here, a beautiful view opened up like an emerald lawn that was washed until the very fence and from the white stack and on the neighbor's plot. How beautiful it is that he went along this path. The young man did not see where this man came from. Not tall, dressed simply and unpretentiously, with a hat on his head and a camera on his neck, and asked Maxim for permission to take a few pictures for his publication. Today, he was just doing an editorial task on pictures from nature and would like to diversify the landscapes with photos of people. Maxim did not refuse the request. In the end, in our age of the universal internet, it is difficult to find a person who would not have appeared in the World Web at least once in his life. And so why not? Let him shoot if this helps him. The photographer did not deceive Max's expectations. He threw several runaway professionals' eyes at the house and lawn near him, and then arranged an express photo session, trying to lessen the alarm of his improvised, as the editor will require them to prepare the number. I was just talking about a special issue about how foreign professionals live on European land. It was known to all locals that such people get very good salary, often even higher than workers from their country, and in general, everything related to foreigners was interesting to local readers. The photographer managed to process the pictures, and with a sense of accomplishment, handed them over to the editor. Just in time. The article, which saw the light in a couple of days, had a stunning success. She got a lot of comments from online versions of the edition, and therefore even got into the domestic glossy magazine. She was placed there to show that they too are not lagging behind world trends and print what is interesting to readers around the world. So, Maxim, he, without knowing it, became a real star of the glance. He simply paid off the aspirations of many of his compatriots who could and wanted to work honestly and selflessly on the cover of the magazine. Moreover, such work was also paid more than worthy. That day, Veronika could not find any job for herself. Her last lover deceived a young woman. Instead of going on vacation with her, he sent a car for her and returned her to her mother at the registration place. Nika was in a fit of rage and angry, but what's the point? She could no longer influence the decision of this fool herself, another of the long-sleeved ones, with whom she has been sharing a bed for the last 6 years. Nika lived frankly badly and completely unpleasantly. Even her mother sought her without a mustache, and for the fact that it does not work, and for not being able to properly adjust to the neck of some promising man, and for not helping her. In other words, there was always a reason to quarrel with two women. Especially, her mother was annoyed that her father, Veronika, lived by singing to herself, and her daughter, as she tried, could not turn off anything from her father that would help her to settle in life. The father just seemed to have exhausted the daughter of his life, and still did not give a reason to suspect that one day he will be able to change his decision. All friends of Veronika have long been in life. Someone is better, someone is worse, but no one is dependent on the state of such an indefinite offense as she is. Yes, and a young woman understood that beauty, her only capital, is also not eternal, and that sooner or later she will no longer attract men's eyes on the street. Now she is still lucky to find herself those who will keep her for at least some time, but it will not always be like that. Take at least her mother. Here is who at youth was a beauty, and the father found her replacement with an amazing speed, through out of life and housing. So that time for Veronika now a little left, and it is necessary to urgently determine with how she will live on. The girl grabbed a magazine from a low table and sat down for a minute to relax her soul and scroll through the pages. Once she dreamed of going to those whose pictures are in such a publication. Luxury life. No worries and excitement, only joy and relaxation. If her father had not turned out to be who he turned out to be, she, Veronika, could also see her photo on the pages of such a magazine. The girl ran through the paper and the publication, but then, with a smile, she turned back a few pages back and looked into the face of a man whose picture took a whole turn. It can't be. Is it really him? But how did Maxim end up here? Not from his profession to pose for a fashionable glance. Veronika immediately did what she had been doing very rarely since high school. She eagerly got acquainted with the article, which in detail and in the paints, described the level of life and salaries of foreign specialists invited to work in Europe, and even quite unkindly whistled. Well, it turns out that with this Maxim you can have a deal. Nika once again scrolled through the magazine and thought, you must definitely let yourself know. Maxim just can't avoid temptation and return their relationship. She remembers how he went crazy over her, even forgave the betrayal, because he did not imagine his life without her, Veronika. So now, as a humble bodyguard, she will put a head on her neck, and she will take care of giving it to the maximum. Only now she will not repeat her past mistakes. She will immediately take the bull by the horns and demand that he buy and record at least one apartment in her name. And it's better for the car too, as compensation for the time they spent separately. So everything is just beginning for her. The main thing is to contact him. Of course, now he is abroad, but let's not talk about these conditions. What is the distance in our world worth? If he calls her to him, then she will also come to him. And they don't even need to get up on their knees and call her in this form. Today she's just kind. And the apartments are not lying on the road. Veronika got her phone and began to call all the numbers that were connected to Maxim. Neither his main number, nor the spare number, nor the worker's number were answered. The auto-answering workers reported that the subscriber was out of the network. There she was, just blocked, everywhere. And on any incoming unknown numbers, as it turned out later, there was also a block. It seems that Maxim simply decided to get rid of her in every sense. But Nika did not want to give up. She typed the number that could not be blocked. Of course, his mother does not digest her, but maybe she still wishes happiness to her son? Leave Maxim alone. She was clearly told off in the phone, as if the connection had happened. Now you can't get to him, and you can't wash your brains. Live your life until you roll to the bottom, and he now has everything in a different way. The phone was thrown, and the girl sat down on her silent phone in her hands. Veronika put the phone on the table and watched it shine with a glossy screen on a polished surface. Tikli Slyazi.